A video that's been making the rounds is where Joe Rogan posted a talk on his show and his Instagram given by radio personality Paul Harvey way back in 1965. It's called If I Were the Devil.
If I were the devil.
Now, some have called it a prophecy, and if you haven't heard it, you can see why it's called that. Especially, there's two things that stood out to me pretty starkly. So let's get into it.
Because it's so wild to watch him say it. It's not good, but it also gives us a chance to right the ship. It hasn't hit the rocks yet.
If I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. Thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington.
What Paul Harvey is able to do, and you'll hear this more and more because there's some details coming up that are pretty amazing, is that it's talking about the structure of reality. And it's basically saying that if you violate the structure of reality, that reality is going to violate you right back. That's basically how it goes. In other words, your car, your manufacturer says, hey, you're going to need to change that oil every now and then. But if you just ignore that, at first it won't even seem like a big deal. But over time, it will lock up the entire engine.
And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. Threaten TV with dirtier movies, and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills.
Wow. He was saying, wow. I was saying, wow, because first of all, I was born when this thing was broadcast in 1965. So I've literally, over the course of my life, the reason I found this so interesting is because I have had a front row seat to watching these things kind of go from kind of low-lying things to very, very much a part of our culture. It's pretty remarkable when you compare it to the 1965 world.
If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves. until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames.
There are people who are deliberately trying to stir up hate and intolerance and misinformation. Attack politics, divisive politics, negative, stirring up of hate and fear and differences. The dirty secret is they work. Even back in 2015, they work to get you elected. The small fringe minority who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can. Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man.
Okay, I feel kind of bad because of the church thing, because I've been at a church where we've seen some splits and divisions. I've been a part of that, and that this kind of cuts to the heart. But you can see how the devil would want to do that, right?
If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild.
Wow.
Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door.
This has happened way too quickly to point to a single culprit. So how has this spread so quickly?
So it's a confluence of a lot of things that are going on at the same time. The gender ideology in the school systems has never been as pervasive or as aggressive. In California, from age kindergarten on in the public school system, kids are taught that they were assigned a gender at birth based on their genitalia, but that might not be who they really are, and here are the other options. So this is something that begins very early, and it progresses and gets more aggressive as they get older. And in California, parents are not even permitted to opt out.
Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door.
Because again, I've watched this over the course of my own life, and seeing that happen, we'd let emotion go wild. But I remember there being rumors that we were going to start having drug-sniffing dogs at the school that I went to in high school. It didn't happen until after I left high school, and then we obviously all know that the metal detector thing has been talked about more, and there are schools that have that. And back in 1965, and even when I was a kid, that was unheard of or unthought of. This did seem very prophetic, like, oh, that's you're exaggerating. That's not going to happen. But now that's an active conversation. Doesn't even sound that unusual to us.
Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money.
All right, that's the other one that I thought this is definitely very specifically prophetic, because again, in 1965, maybe that stuff was going on underneath the surface. It obviously was, but it wasn't known, it wasn't seen, and that didn't come along until 30 or more years later.
If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct.
And it's a teaching job, so the kids are going to call me either Mr. or Mrs. Jamie. It depends on what I want, but
if you are paying attention to culture at all, you know these things are cycling through increasingly, and they're going against the structure of reality itself. Another man by the name of G.K. Chesterton knew this kind of stuff as well, and all the way back in 1926, he wrote these words in the Illustrated London News, where he was talking about where things look like we're going. He says, but this skepticism is throwing thousands into a condition of doubt, not about a cult or about obvious things. We shall soon be in a world in which man will be howled down for saying 2 + 2 = 4, in which furious party cries will be raised against anybody who says that cows have horns, in which people will persecute the heresy of calling a triangle a three-sided figure, and hang a man for maddening a mob with the news that the grass is green. What is he saying? And we've seen this. I've watched this stuff on Twitter where people argue whether 2 + 2 = 4, and our subjectivism is becoming so much a part of how we think that reality itself is starting to be disputed.
Entitled to your opinion.
If I am, then why would you kick me out of class? It's not very inclusive of
Can I finish
opinion.
my sentence, please? It's not very inclusive. No, I'm sorry, what you were saying was not very inclusive, and this is an inclusive school.
Yeah, how was what I was saying?
Because I was saying that what's wrong with the website is that there are more than one gender in this country.
That's
by law.
your opinion.
That is my opinion, and that is an opinion which is acceptable in the school. I'm afraid yours, which you're saying that there's no such thing as anyone other than male or female, is not
Scientifically,
inclusive.
there are just 2 genders.
You are choosing to make an issue of this, because I said, are you really going to do it? That was your opportunity to keep quiet. You chose to do so.
I think it's silly to have anything other than 2 genders. So
Okay.
Anything
could
else is a
you
personal
please
opinion.
keep that opinion to your own house, not in the
So
school?
you get to put your opinion out in class, and my
No,
opinion has to-
I am not.
My
putting
opinion has to stay
I
inside
am
the
not
house.
putting my opinion. I am not putting my opinion out. I am stating what is national school authority policy. Okay.
So we need to kind of take this to heart. And in Joe Rogan's words, I like to believe there's still time to right the ship.